everyone. Really excited to be here. Really excited to do this talk. The core title of this and the main areas that we're going to be exploring is NFTs, building digital communities. So we're going to start from just introducing ourselves to just give you a background on who we are. I am Hamza. I'm a multi-disciplinary artist, and I'm experimenting with crypto native art. You'll get to know what crypto native art means later on in this presentation, but it's based with combining your art with crypto and creating something that was not really possible before crypto existed. And I'm also interested in building Web3 through contributing to visuals, ideas, and everything in between. So that's a brief overview about me. I'll tell my small snippets during presentation to as in the context of what we're talking about. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Xphyee. I'm a experimental digital illustrator and an artist, as well as a collector of NFTs. So having the experience of doing both, it gives me kind of a unique perspective of NFTs. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Okay, so we're going to start this presentation by trying to bridge what we generally see and what we generally hear about NFTs and try to navigate through how much of it is like the actual story. So one thing that me and Xphyee, while we're discussing things and the community that we hang out in, one thing that we see a lot is the headlines or the news about NFTs from mainstream media. Uh, every single person on this planet, if you're not really digging deep into something, you'll probably get your news from one of these sources. So it's building a narrative of NFTs whose first side is the games. We have took small snippets of big media talking about NFTs, and you can see here that the headlines is screaming that a 12-year-old boy is making money more than most people will do in their entire lives, or people, a digital artist selling something for well double-digit millions in dollars, and something selling out for $96 million in one hour. So this is something that's very coherent in the mainstream media, that NFTs have a lot of money involved, and you don't even have to be 13 to make a lot of money. And this is one of the narratives, and we're going to discuss how this narrative is completely wrong. But we need to talk about another side that we all also see in the media.
So another side we also see a lot of is the kind of negative um, impacts, if you will, that the media kind of tries to spread out there. So you get stuff like headlines like this. You see the kind of scams and the, sometimes maybe the environmental impact. But these kind of news is like, even if you take the scams, for instance, they're only such a small portion of what goes on in the NFT space. If you look at the majority of the money that's being spent within the NFT community, the majority of the money is being spent on good projects, like the ones that are actually building something. And this is just a very small part of it, but the news kind of focuses on it to a point where it seems like, it's a huge part of the space. And even if we go back to like the last slide with these headlines, a lot of these articles, even with the positive, they end at the end with a kind of dig at the NFT space. So even like, say for example, the article in the middle with the 12-year-old boy that makes 290,000. Right at the end of that article, you see a quote from a former Christie's employee that says anybody that buys an NFT is a bit of a mug. So we are constantly seeing this narrative by the media where they're trying to kind of bring NFTs down, and that kind of becomes what the mass media kind of follows, and the people, the regular person follows, and they kind of stay away, or they have a negative attitude towards it.
So we want to briefly touch upon what the reality is, being insiders or being people who have been living and breathing in this space for a couple of months. For me, Xphyee has been there for a long while, longer time than I have at least. So this is kind of like an NFT iceberg that we came up with to kind of break down of what's actually going on in reality. And the mainstream media, if you talk about it, the news that we get from people, the things that we see around, that's like the top visible iceberg that involves money and artwork or collectibles. I'm sure most of us have some knowledge, mostly about crypto, but it is kind of interjunct or interlinked with NFTs. And you might, or all of us might have an idea for the money bit because the mainstream media is pushing it. And we also understand that the money is being put into collectibles or artwork that 12-year-olds are making, or someone like people is making. And that's fine. That's one aspect that is completely true about NFTs. And we'd like to consider it in the flipping slash trading area of NFTs. Like, okay, they're traded for money and their pictures essentially, or their artwork. That is something that we understand. That is something the mainstream media puts in. But there's this entire hidden iceberg of NFTs that we're slowly going into. And in the next few slides, we're going to talk about it, that people or projects are already doing so much with these four things. So briefly first touch upon these four things. The first is culture. The second would be economy. The third is geography and history. So when we talk about NFT projects and when we talk about people investing into their NFTs, there are communities that are forming around the fact that they're buyers or owners of these NFTs. And these communities hang out on Twitter, these communities hang out on Discord, these community hang out in real life events. And they kind of form a subculture, a mini culture that is directly specified towards owners of that particular NFT project, or even people or supporters of that NFT projects that are not, maybe they're unable to afford it, maybe they don't wish to buy it, but they're still a part of that culture. So a lot of NFTs have started creating mini cultures where there are inside jokes amongst the people who are into that NFT project. There is a relevant history of when that project launched, how that project transitioned into what it is now, maybe some news that propelled the project to new heights, such as maybe the project being listed at a very high uh, at an auction house, such as the project being bought by some celebrity. All of these things combined make a very good and very unique culture for some projects. Then we have the economy bit. So we understand the basic money bit, people creating the projects and someone paying money to buy that project. But that is just like the first level idea of what money is in that project. But these projects are creating merchandise. These projects are uh, empowering artists to create derivatives of their own artwork, and these artists are making money on side of it. These projects are running charity programs and they're donating a lot of money to a lot of foundations. These projects are also hiring people, creating jobs, doing all of these things to kind of create an ecosystem of money that is not just related to people paying the people who made money, but an entire economic system whose core identity goes back to the culture bit. Uh, People owning or wanting to own a particular set of NFT projects. Then we come to geography, which kind of sounds counterintuitive because we're all doing this digitally. So how can it be geographical? And here is where the idea of metaverse comes in. We have a lot of companies, a lot of projects that create virtual worlds, and there are a few popular virtual worlds where almost all projects are buying virtual land, and they have this entire virtual universe where they have their own area, where they have their own buildings, where they have their own museums, and you can hang out with the fellow owners of that project. It's kind of gate kept for people who are invested in the project. So they have created entire virtual lands where people can hang out on the internet together. And that is one way, and that is one of the most popular way to for these projects to populate an entire geography through buying land in the metaverse. And the final is history. which kind of becomes the culture of yesterday. So anything that's relevant today, that's culture, and anything that was relevant yesterday becomes history. And this is such a weird concept because most projects, NFT projects that we know today, except for a few exceptions, have been existing for less than a year. Maybe they're not even existing for 6 months, they're existing for 5 months. But since the space is moving so fast, they're creating history and they're making all of these things that are being forged into the history of their entire culture. And if you look at these four things and if you zoom out a bit from NFTs, you'd realize that this is like a country operates. You know, a country has a culture, an economy, a geography, a history. So all of these things are basically letting people from all around the world make a new network state or a mini country with their own rules, with their own economy, with their own geography and their own history. And that is what we're seeing NFTs to get into. And a very important aspect before we move on to the next slide and show you a few projects that are doing this is the idea of the metaverse. The metaverse enabling all of this to kind of become in sync with what we're talking about here. So we'll touch the metaverse right at the end of this particular presentation. We wish to show you a few projects that are doing this as we speak.
So here is one of the projects that I'm sure everyone is familiar with, which is the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which has kind of taken the whole world by storm, um, as we know. And if we go back to the example of something that's creating culture, we have this with the Bored Apes. Everybody that owns a Bored Ape is part of this culture. They are literally living. At the moment, obviously, they've bought the Bored Apes have bought land in the metaverse, but since that's still in development, at the moment, people are choosing Twitter and Discord as being their kind of metaverse home, if you will. It's like a basic form of the geographical location. And even outside of the people that own the Bored Apes, we have people like us. Like I don't have a Bored Ape. In fact, I had the chance to get a Bored Ape when it first launched. I was there around the time when it was launching, and everyone was buying. And I remember I could have gotten in at £300, and I was thinking I should do it. I should do it, and I was like, I don't know if I should. There was like I was 95% sure that this would be a huge success, and that 5% uncertainty stopped me from buying. And obviously, I have huge regret now for not getting in. But maybe in the future, who knows? But yeah, even the people that don't own Bored Apes, but are in the NFT community, we know the Bored Apes. We respect the Bored Apes, right? So we're kind of part of that culture as well. And within the Bored Apes as well, if we see like some of the headlines here, when Post Malone buys a Bored Ape, or when they buy a lot of land, when we get actual bands, like musical bands being formed by these Bored Ape avatars, like these are historical moments that kind of seep into our history. I know it hasn't even been that long, but it's already, as time goes by, these are things that we are going to be talking about for many years to come, which kind of becomes ingrained into the history of all of this, which also in reverse turns, is part of the culture as well. So we're seeing this happen with, this is just one example of one of the projects, but we're seeing this happen with a lot of these projects where we're seeing whole if we're talking about economy as well, of course we know the Bored Apes are extremely valuable. So there's money constantly coming into the Bored Apes. There's within the individual Bored Apes as well as the original owners of the Bored Apes that you reinvest that money into building the Bored Apes into this whole economy. So that's one example, a very good example, I guess, with the Bored Apes. But there's more that you may not have heard of. For instance,
For instance, the Superlative Secret Society. This is kind of an underrated product or project that we wanted to like blend something that's hugely popular and something that's not mainstream, but we feel that are doing something which also proves the point of how projects are moving towards the things that we talked about. So from this very chart that we see in front of us, I won't go through it entirely, but you can see some aspects of it, like visit our gallery in Bali, or a global tour that's going to pop up around the world, or exclusive merchandise that's going to come out. Reading all of these things, you can see that this project is not just people buying JPEGs of the internet. This project is actually getting converted into an entire brand, an entire ecosystem. If you read the line about foundation and how the 100% of the profit comes in to the people who are holding this NFT, you can kind of match this towards investing in a company by buying their shares or something along the similar lines. But the only difference is that to buy shares, you need to go through a lot of legal complexities, and you generally don't make as much money as generally people are making right now from NFTs. So it's a permissionless system where you get to buy into a project and you get to be a profit holder of all of these amazing things that are happening all over the world. And to build upon this, we have another slide where there's kind of, uh, you know, they're showing how it's progressing. If you could move forward, Xphyee. Yeah. So look at this. Like there's sneakers here that are from this project, and there's this gallery being built. They actually bought land to get the gallery that we just read in the previous slide. So there are real life projects that are dumping in, and all we have to do is to just invest into them, and we're part of a really large ecosystem that's growing every single day. And the main team is working on it. It's very similar to investing, and I really like to think of this as an example. Uh, like if you see visuals that are very famous around the world, if you talk about Pokemon or if you talk about the Hello Kitty franchise, you'd see that those are brands recognized and seen all around the world, and they have such a mass merchandise system, right? They're in bags, they have shoes, they have everything, and these projects are slowly becoming that. They're powered by being visually aesthetic, and then it expands into the entire world with their visual branding. And this is what the projects are coming to. One last project that Xphyee would be covering is DEADFELLAZ, which Xphyee will take now.
So DEADFELLAZ is a very interesting project. It's actually one me and Han City both own at the moment. And something that's interesting with for me personally with the DEADFELLAZ is that I actually managed to win two DEADFELLAZ, right? So before winning it, it was like it was part of the whole space, the NFT space. There was a lot of people that were supporting it, buying it, and I was kind of seeing it from afar. And I was like sort of interested, but I couldn't afford it at the time. So I was like, okay. But when I actually got given two of them, I'm now suddenly like kind of pushed into this space without having to consider like my value, if you will, like my investment side of it. Like I'm free invested inside this whole system. And now I look into it, right? So I have this unique perspective where I didn't have to kind of buy in, but um, so I don't have that pressure of the financial incentive, if you will. And then my whole focus is just the community to kind of see what's going on there. And suddenly what happens is I get very interested in it because there's a lot of things going on with this project, right? I see, the giveaways they do, which is how I got my one. I see the competitions that they run, the kind of collaborative nature of it. It was my first insight into how communities can be built around these avatars, right? And each avatar is unique. Everyone kind of adopts it as their personality. And this another really interesting thing with this, as we were mentioning, with the whole branding and merchandise, along with the DEADFELLAZ as well as Superlative as well as Bored Ape Yacht Club, each holder of their, and this doesn't apply to every project, but for these projects in particular, and quite a lot of them, you as the owner of your DEADFELLA, you have full commercial rights to it. So what that means is I now, with the DEADFELLAZ I own, or the Bored Ape if I owned one, or the Superlative, I can go out there and make my own merchandise. I can make a whole character, a whole like character around my DEADFELLA, turn him into a musician, turn him into a YouTube star, maybe animate him. I'm free to do that and commercialize and kind of merchandise and all this, like monetize it basically. So as Deadfellas themselves, which is a very strong team, go on to do their own thing, maybe a Netflix show in the future, toys which they're already developing right now, that's actually happening as they start putting billboards all over the place. As the brand of Deadfellas grows, I now actually have an opportunity to make my own little sub brand with my Deadfella, and there's 10,000 of them. So out of the 10,000, say like even 1,000 people go out there and start doing stuff with their avatar, what's going to happen? Right? We're going to see a very new and interesting way to deal with intellectual properties in the future that we haven't seen before. At the moment, we see, as mentioned before, Hello Kitty, or say like Marvel with the Mickey Mouse. They're owned by the company, and that's it. It stops right there. Right? I can't go out there and make a Mickey Mouse T-shirt. I'll be sued. That's not the case here with a lot of these avatar projects. So we're so early, we're yet to see the full case of how this will play out. And I think it might be a double-edged sword as well. Like maybe somebody out there will make something with a dead fella that's a negative thing, right? So it could backfire as well. But I think overall, if everyone's building something like, significant and something that people like, it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. Even with the dead fellas as well. I mean, sorry, the bored apes as well. There's actually an example as well where somebody's making a coffee company. So this is one individual that owns a bored ape that is building a whole coffee company brand with the bored ape, right? So imagine this coffee company now goes on to become a franchise all around the world, like a big franchise, because it already has a somewhat of an audience, right? All the bored apes will be supportive of this. Everyone else, like I mentioned before, even if we don't own bored apes, we're very supportive of the bored apes. So you kind of get this instant audience straight away by using that IP. So the IP stuff will be very interesting, and it kind of creates more of a geography location within the real world for these projects. And now the metaverse.
Perfect. So since I've covered all these projects, we want to bring it all together and talk to you guys about the metaverse. So when we hear the word metaverse, we have this recent news from Mark Zuckerberg announcing that name change and talking about that little video. So we briefly wanted to touch of how it would look like generally. One of the major misconceptions we see when we talk about the metaverse is people imagine it as like a virtual world only. It's much more than a virtual world. It's basically the expansion of the world that we live in into digital in a way that it combines both digital and the physical world. And virtual worlds are like a very small part of it. Like when you think of Second Life or games like at a very limited capacity, games like Sims or games like Roblox, games like uh, Fortnite, where people are hanging around together, being at the same place. That is one aspect of it. So the metaverse is basically a, a combination through augmented reality, through virtual reality, through general graphics that we now see, to create kind of like you can say that it's a combination of making two worlds collide. One is the real world and one is the digital world. And the catch is that it all comes together, or it will only be a true metaverse if that too is in real time and not like we're not experiencing right now. This call is real time. Everyone can see the same thing at the same time if we do not consider the delay that might be there. But the metaverse is very similar. We can join the same place at the same time and we can find each other at the same place. And this is in development by other companies much faster than what Facebook is doing itself. When we talked about previously buying a land in the metaverse, where a lot of projects are buying land in the metaverse, they're buying lands in virtual worlds such as the Central Land, Sandbox, Crypto Voxels, Somnium Space. all of these are digital worlds that are based on NFTs itself. So NFTs play a very important role in the metaverse because what they present is something very similar to the real world, that is scarcity, things not being unlimited, while other digital stuff, are can be copy and pasted. Through NFTs, you can ensure that it can't be that way. So you're creating scarcity, and then you're creating something that is irreversible. Like in the real world, if you exchange cash, as an example, if you give someone cash, you cannot take it back, uh, except if it's by force. But in NFT world, that's not an option. So it enables scarcity, it enables accountability like the real world, and that is why it plays such an important role in the metaverse. So I'd just like to end the metaverse aspect with an analogy that makes me understand what NFTs are for the metaverse. And it's crypto is the fuel of the metaverse, as it's written, in the slide itself. It means that crypto, since it's money and since it's transferred, it's basically the fuel to run the metaverse. If you want to sell something, if you want to list something, if you want to show something, it costs the transactions on the blockchain, and that is what cryptocurrency is doing. But everything else you see in the metaverse, you see the virtual land, you see the virtual aspect of it, you see the graphics, you see the visual, you see the smart contracts that are enabling everything. All of them are NFTs. And this is kind of like a bullish case on NFTs because a lot of people have this argument that these are bubble and these will burst. But the fact is that the metaverse can't exist without NFTs being a very important part of it. And if companies like Facebook, which is like one of the biggest tech companies in the world, are investing so much into the future of the metaverse, then it's almost kind of obvious that NFTs are here to stay, and they're going to play a very big role in the metaverse.
I think with the metaverse as well, one thing about it is it's very hard to see um, it now. You kind of have to really use your imagination because it's still, it's close, but it's not at the same time. It's still quite far away. Um, like even me personally, I managed to get land in Sandbox, right? And when I bought that land in Sandbox, I paid, I think it was like £2,500, which is a lot of money. A lot of money. And even and I'm somebody that believes in NFTs. I'm like fully invested in NFTs. And even I was like, am I really doing this? Like, what am I doing? I'm buying some virtual land. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's like I bought it and I can't really do anything with it at the moment. I mean, Sandbox isn't even a game that's released yet. So you're literally buying the land like ahead of time and there's nothing you can do with it as well. So it's like if it's so hard for even us that are involved to comprehend, like imagine how hard it is for the average person to kind of see this future. But as you think about it more and more, you see how the future is leading to this. And we know now, thanks to Facebook, thanks to Microsoft, who are kind of, building on that and announced that they're leading the way towards that as well. We are definitely heading to this kind of amalgamation of both the real world and the digital world with both AR as well as VR, right? Um, and this is what if it's hard to understand why some people are spending like hundreds of thousands on these NFTs or millions of pounds on these NFTs, I would say like think of the metaverse, right? So a big argument that people make is like, why would I buy this image if I can just right click and save it, right? What difference is that from you buying it? Why are you buying it? But now imagine this NFT in the metaverse where say it's a digital painting, you can walk up to that painting in the metaverse, and then as you get closer, it will give you a little check mark and a signifier that this is this is an authentic piece, right? If somebody was to put that up as a right click save when they walk up to it, they wouldn't get that same authentication. So you're by buying it as an NFT, it's something that you're kind of buying early on as an investment for this new future that we're going to see in the next coming years, right?
Okay, so friends, we have reached the final part of the presentation where we'd be speaking. And there's something that we'd like to talk about to everyone who we talk to about the metaverse and about NFTs. And the thing is that the metaverse is in its infancy, and as we talk about it, I'm pretty sure a few, at least in the audience, would still be like, I don't buy this. What's going on? I don't get this. And which is like a proof that we're very early in the system, and which also means that there's an opportunity for every single one of us to play a role. And you can read the small terms that we have collected. I'm going to focus on the top three, that is builders, investors, and participants. And you can think about, where do you personally stand in the entire revolution that's going on. There are builders, which I am a part of, being an artist, kind of learning coding to understand what's going on. So builders are people who are contributing to the metaverse through art, through code, through graphics, through talking about it, through creating all of these worlds. So you can be a builder, you can contribute to the metaverse by being a part of the building side. Or if you're not interested in building, you can be an investor. And since right now it's so early, you can be an early stage investor in a lot of projects that are going on. You can buy art, and the art that you feel that is going to play a big role in the metaverse. You can facilitate things between people, such as talking to people who are techie and connecting them to people that might help uh, them to make stuff, or you're putting money into a builder and you're funding them to create the metaverse. Or you can simply be a shareholder. That's what me and Xphyee are as well. You can buy some NFTs that you feel will play a very big role in the metaverse to come, and you can be a part, you can share that piece of pie by investing into them. Or if you don't care about being a builder, or if you're not really interested in the monetary aspect, you can simply be a participant. You can look at it, you can read up about it, you can talk about the project that you feel confident about, and so much more. You can just support, and you can simply just sit and be amazed. That's also part of supporting. So that's all. What's your role?
So we've come to an end with our section of this. Just wanted to ask if there's any questions that anybody has. Please feel free to ask. I don't know if Hamza has, City has any closing thoughts.
I just want people to, if they have any questions, if they feel something was confusing, because we have left this section for a very, very huge purpose. And that section is for you to talk to us and try to ask what's going on.
I think somebody asked why I have chosen to be an anonymous artist, which is actually a very good question for the space as well, because there are a lot of us. I would say at the moment, the majority of us are anon, and there's actually less people that are kind of what we call doxed, which is you show yourself, your face and your name. Um, Part of the reason why I do it is because uh, I'm kind of thinking of the future where I still want to be able to walk around the streets and not be bothered, right? Because I'm building myself as this kind of brand that's hopefully going to become like a big, like a kind of famous, quote unquote, famous brand, right? Um, but another huge reason why people are doing it anon is because this is all public. You can now go and see my wallet and what assets I hold. You can now literally go and see into my wallet and how much money I hold in crypto. Right? You can see that right now. If you have my wallet address, you can see that. So it's probably not a good idea to be walking down the streets like where everyone knows that you're holding certain assets or certain money, especially this early on, like in a stage where, you know, maybe governments and kind of authorities won't care if somebody steals your JPEG. Let's be honest, right? So that's a huge reason why a lot of people, you can see they'll stay anon. And one other reason, I guess there's multiple reasons. One other reason is some of these people are celebrities. They're already famous, and they kind of want to, as we talked about the metaverse as well, they kind of want to live in the metaverse as somebody else, right? It gives them the opportunity. Some of these celebrities that we've heard stories of, that they're doing it because they can't go out in the public and kind of live their life. But now they have an opportunity to do that through the metaverse, where they don't get like kind of barraged and hassled with people coming up to them. So yeah, it's interesting. There's different reasons why, but yeah, those are few of the reasons.
A lot of very interesting questions popping into the chat, and I'll try to address a few, and Xphyee you can address the remaining if I'm unable to address them. So the first is, can you mention a couple of examples where NFTs can have like a utility? So one thing that everyone should understand is that most NFTs right now are experimental, and they're trying to go through an entire system of what's possible with NFTs. And that also means that there are a lot of NFTs that talk about utility as a way to increase value of their projects, and there's not really too much utility. But the utilities that I think is the first utility that I think is very important is intellectual property rights that we talked about in the previous slides. If an NFT is allowing you to use their intellectual property and they're building a brand, so what this means is that you have a right to something that's already well known, and you can use that right to create merchandise and to create a brand that can sell out because people already are very invested into it. So that's one part of the utility. The second part would be for people to get perks around the digital universe, such as maybe, and if they have collaborations with different NFT projects, so maybe you're invited into their events, or maybe you're invited into their community. Otherwise, that you have to pay for their NFT to do it. Maybe you're invited into a very small community like that. So these are a bunch of things that I personally feel is utility, but you'd hear a lot of people talking about community. You'd hear a lot of people talk about tokens. You'd hear a lot of people talking about these things. I personally feel, my personal opinion, that these are not proven, but the first two are proven and something that I have personally benefited from. So that's the first question. The second would is, how do you think Bybit exchanges can integrate with DeFi NFT culture? Uh, that is a wonderful question. I feel that a lot of people are are not really familiar with the process of installing MetaMask or going transferring money from an exchange to a wallet and being there thinking they might lose their money itself. And MetaMask as a wallet, or any mainstream wallet that is there, is still, I think they're still very complicated. So what exchanges like Bybit can do is to kind of create a channel people between people and the NFTs that are popular, or the NFTs that they're interested in, and kind of make a connection, or people would be able to buy through Bybit, you know, remove the middle techie bit and allow people who are not that techie to be able to participate in the entire system that is going on beforehand. So that is something that I feel that would have benefited from if I wanted to come into this NFT bit for a very long time, and the only reason why I started a little later than I did was because it was so complicated that I feared that I might do something wrong. So that's one thing. Uh, X, you can answer the other one.
I actually apologies if I skip any questions because I can't see the full chat, but I did see a question that said, "Can we have more than one metaverse?" And what I would like to say about that is, the metaverse is just an extension of the internet, right? The term metaverse itself, just think of it as internet. We're already kind of living in the metaverse, just an extremely basic form of it. The internet is the metaverse. When you go through one website to another website to another website, you just you go from one to the other. You're kind of moving from one quote unquote metaverse to another metaverse, right? Twitter to Instagram, that's two different locations, and you're kind of surfing through them inside the internet, which is going to be the metaverse. The expansion of the internet is going to be the metaverse. So when Facebook make theirs, see that as one location, and then you might go from Facebook to Microsoft, right? So then you're going to go to the Microsoft metaverse, and maybe that's where you work. Maybe you come back to Facebook, and that's where you hang out with your friends, right? So the metaverse as a term is just an expansion of the internet. That's what I would say.
There's another question that says, will ETH 2.0 solve the high gas fee for minting or transacting? And I think yes, it would solve it. I feel that nobody could predict the the early adoption of what is going on. If even if you go 1 year back, there weren't a lot of people talking about NFTs. There's this artist that I really admire called Xcopy, and he's one of the biggest NFT artists right now in the world. And 1 year ago, he shared something from his Tumblr account, and 1 year ago he was asking people to get his NFT for free. He was telling people like, take this for free, please. I made this NFT on Ethereum. Please take it for free, and people were ignoring him. So from in just 1 year, for someone giving NFTs for free and people rejecting it, to them selling their NFTs for a number of million numbers involved, we have seen the adaptation of crypto and NFTs very, very quickly. And that is, I think that's where Ethereum got a little bit clogged. And, the high gas fee is explained through this because no one could have predicted the parabolic rise of NFTs and its entire culture. And I'm pretty sure the team at Ethereum is working really hard for the 2.0 to come in. And it is annoying, to be honest, because I mainly work on the Ethereum ecosystem, and it's annoying for the people who collect my art to pay such high gas fee, and it's annoying for me when I'm collecting art to pay such high gas fee. But that also gives us kind of a nod that how early we're in the system. If you think about it, any modern invention, the camera that you're looking me through, the screen that we have in front of us, all of these had a precedent towards something that was not as great, right? Something that was before the screen was floppy. Maybe it wasn't bright enough. Maybe before that it was glitchy. And to come to a screen that is as perfect as we're using, we had to go through phases to make it this perfect and sustainable. And that is what's going on through the Ethereum system, where we're at a place where it's not sustainable, and we're working towards going something that is perfect. And that is actually an opportunity for us to influence the final result that we couldn't before. So that's that answer.
Well, what I would say to that as well, if I could add to that as well, whether it will get rid of gas fees, we can kind of see this model already working through Tezos. So Tezos is another blockchain where you can buy NFTs through Art and Object.com, and it's actually like already got massive volume, like hundreds of thousands of NFTs being sold there every day. And that's on proof of stake, right? So the gas fees are like pennies. They're almost non-existent. You don't even feel it. And it's amazing. I myself have ended up collecting hundreds of pieces just because it's so easy to collect. And it gives me the freedom to kind of collect and kind of support artists as well because I'm not worried about gas fees. I can just go out and buy it. The price I see is the price I pay. And a little confession as well, if I will. Me and Han City, before joining this a couple of hours ago, when we were supposed to go to sleep and get some rest before joining this, Han City decided for whatever reason he'd start collecting for the first time on Tezos. And it took up about, I don't know how long, an hour, hour and a half of him collecting when he's supposed to be sleeping. And I couldn't sleep because I was excited to see what he collects. So it's crazy when you start seeing like when gas becomes less of an issue. I think we're going to see some huge mass adoption because right now gas is a big block of that. So yeah, we're very excited for ETH 2.0, and I think it will resolve the gas fee issues. It's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. And I think I'm going to answer the final question because it's already 47 minutes into the presentation. So, final question, and then we can move towards uh, the quiz, the wonderful quiz. Question is, crypto adoption is still in early stage. If crypto is the fuel of the metaverse in terms of time frame, where are we right now? And to that, my friend, I'll say we don't know for sure. And I'd say that because if you would have asked this question about 1 year ago to Xcopy, the artist that I talked about, he'd say we're miles, we're miles before the fact that I'm gonna be selling anything. And it happened so quickly that in 1 year, he's selling everything that he drops goes up to 1 million at least. That's how successful he is right now. So I cannot say where are we right now, but what I can say, what I can talk about is Ethereum is already a very, very mature ecosystem with thousands of dApps being built on it. So when we say that crypto is the fuel of the metaverse, uh, it's obvious that the fuel that is the most efficient would be playing a biggest role in the metaverse creation. And I cannot talk more about Ethereum being the one that is right now the most mature and the most stable and the most developed with the most developers. So if you talk about Ethereum, there are so many things that are already matured, and the only thing that's required is the metaverse to start building around it. If we talk about other cryptocurrencies, they're not as mature, but they're still already, reaching there in their own niche. Like Xphyee talked about Tezos. Tezos is a wonderful blockchain that's very developed in the NFT space. Solana has started to like catch up a little bit and they're showcasing NFTs, but I don't think anyone comes in comparison with Ethereum right now, and Ethereum is already miles ahead of most cryptocurrencies. So I don't see a reason why crypto would lag if the metaverse start creating. I see, I understand that the high gas fee would disable a lot of people to start building on Ethereum. And that is why I think ETH 2.0 is required for people to completely immerse themselves into the Ethereum ecosystem. And that is what I predict would happen.